She's the founder of Entrepreneurs.com, which is a blog that's read in 130 countries. That blog shares one idea every day from the best business books that you can read, and she does it where you can read it in under 5 minutes. So quick hits of really valuable information. She does the reading for you, puts it together, and I can say it is a great blog. So make sure you subscribe to that. She was recently given the 2018-2019 Smart Hustle Magazine Entrepreneur of the Year Award, and it has been called a top 10 leadership influencer in Mexico by highbox.co. We are extremely honored to have her here today. I'm really excited to have her deliver her keynote address, Achieve Your Goals in 2019, Practical Steps for You and Your Business. And luckily, I've had a sneak peek of her talk, and I can attest to there's some really, really great nuggets. So I hope you take as much away from this as I did when she was first sharing it with me. So without further ado,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Hi, Stanford. Hi, UConn. How's everybody doing? Awesome. Give me 1 second just to make sure that we've got our presentation on. And the most important thing, if you want to interact, which I highly, highly encourage you to do so, you can see in here at the bottom that to interact in here, you just need to go to incaptive.com and type in that presentation code, and you'll be able to get a copy of the slides, and I'll be able to get your questions, and so forth. But before that housekeeping item out of the way, I have a quick question for all of you. Who in here is already an entrepreneur? Who already has a business that is running? All right, look at you, most of you. That is fantastic. So you are open for business. Who in here is on their way to becoming an entrepreneur? Who wants to become one? All right, very cool. A handful of you, but I have to say it's a most rewarding and awesome endeavor. So you are on the right track, and you are on the right track today as well to be able to learn as much as you can. However, whether you already have a business or you want to have a business, you will probably agree with me that it's a lot of work, isn't it? Can I see a show of hands? Amen. Does anybody feel like this? Yes, most of the time. This one idea that you had has just grown exponentially, enormously, and sometimes it can leave us quite overwhelmed. Am I the only one? I don't think so. I see heads nodding everywhere. So as we plan ahead for the new year, one of the things that has struck me is that in 2019, I was looking at all my goals and thinking, I think I'm gonna need many lifetimes to be able to put this together. Is anybody on the same boat? Does anybody feel like there's always too much to do and very little time? And then with that very little time, there are too many things vying for our attention, so we are spread too thin? Can I get a show of hands again? Yes, look around, it's all of us. So what do we do about this? I often wonder, what is it that makes it that some people achieve so much and a few people that do not achieve as much? What's the difference? What makes those super achievers versus the not so achievers? And I'm sure that you have heard that knowledge is power. Well, I tend to agree with that to a certain extent. I think we live in a wonderful age where we have access to the whole of human knowledge, and that is the internet. In the internet, you can find anything, from the most obscure to the most wonderful things to the most random, and a lot of cat videos as well. We have tons of books. We have access to the most privileged minds via the internet as well, and in places like this. So what is it about knowledge that is power? And the more I thought about it, it's not the knowledge per se that is what gives you the power, it's the implementation of what you know. Knowledge by itself doesn't give you much other than the satisfaction of knowing. But if you implement it, then you will be able to achieve. So the trick for being a superachiever is simply this: execution. And I believe that most of us in the room, given that we are entrepreneurs or want to become entrepreneurs, are already people who are, well, hustlers. That's what we do. That's what we need to do. We need to get going on a lot of things for this. However, sometimes we just need a little bit of guidance, and this is where hopefully this presentation will come in. My goal is for you to learn the different things or different tips, pointers, tricks, tools, so that you can be able to execute better in 2019. Because you already know what your goals are. You just need to put them in practice, and you just need to know what are some steps to take to make them easier, faster, and work better in your favor. And one thing that I have to mention in here is that at the end, I've got 4 surprises for you. So please stay here, because I would love to help you implement your goals with those surprises that I have for you. But I'll talk about them at the very end so that we can focus right now on what we need to do. I am a stickler for acronyms. Every time I give a presentation, what I try to do is put together an acronym that goes with what I talk about so that people can remember it. And fortunately, the acronym for today is this: GOALS, GOALS. And why did I pick these things? It was very hard for me to figure out from the whole universe and all the books I read, the authors that I've interviewed, the people that I've talked to, and the principles that I've implemented. It was hard for me to put in 30 minutes all of what I talk about in my blog or the workshops that I do. But I figured this is probably the essence of what you will be able to use right away. And if you need anything else, by all means, please send me a question via Incaptive, and we'll be good to go. I'll be happy to answer those questions either at the end or via email, and I will stay here for the whole time. So now let's run with what I've got for you today, which is goals. What is the first G? It stands for goal planning. You will find that odd that I'm not saying goal setting. The reason why I don't say goal setting is because I think goal setting can be somewhat confused with simply having an intention, almost like a New Year resolution. I have set my mind, I have set my goals to this particular thing. Okay, so what? We need to do more than that. What we need to do in terms of goal planning is precisely use that word, plan ahead. I find it hard to believe that people spend more time planning a vacation than really planning a goal. We put so much time and effort into our vacations. Why don't we do the same with our goals? And I'm not saying paralysis by analysis and until that plan is done, we will proceed. No, but put a little bit more thought behind what you need to do to make sure that you can execute well, that you can make the most of your time, and that you will be able to succeed. With that, I am a big proponent of what are called SMART goals. Anybody familiar with that? Okay, most of you, which is fantastic. So I will not go into too much detail about this because most of you know. For the rest of you, I'll just do a quick rundown through this. SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Those are the main characteristics of a goal. I am going to dwell for just a tad in the time-bound part, and I'll tell you why. Specifically, as we look at our goals ahead for the year, we tend to think in yearly increments. And what I say is ditch the annualized thinking. Why? Let me paint a quick scenario for you. Has it ever happened to you? Let's pretend we're back in 2010 celebrating, woohoo, Happy New Year. All right, so what were our goals? Pick one goal that you had, or pick a few. Did you come to the end of January and say, oh, you know, I'm just a tad behind, but it's all right because I'll catch up in February? And then you came to the end of February, and then you were still a little bit behind, but it was cool, because it was still February. You still had March, April, May, the rest of the year. And then March came. and then April, and then the summer, and then you went on vacation, and then it's back to school, back to work, back to whatever. And what happens? Thanksgiving is here. We may still have a little bit of time before the year is up, but then what happens? It's December 8th, and we find ourselves here. Who is here with me? Who had that feeling? Who had that one goal that we dragged and dragged and dragged along? And unfortunately, sometimes we feel like, oh, you know what? Let's just push it till next year. Anybody? Can I see a show of hands? Be honest. All right, there are a few more up. All right, so that's what happens with annualized thinking. And the reason why I do not like it is because we tend to have this optimism of a full year ahead of us, and that is not necessarily the best way of kicking ourselves into gear. Whereas if we set sprints, as this picture intends to portray, whether it's a month, 2 months, 3 months, the goal is closer, the deadline is closer, and we tend to have better results with that. I myself run 90-day sprints, and those have been very successful, both for me as well for the people that I run them with. I have, incredible testimonials of entrepreneurs or one-apreneurs who have already started and who have implemented a lot of things that otherwise, had they not had that sprint, had they not had that specific deadline, they would not have been able to get that done. So with that, what I suggest, again, on the time-bound part of SMART is do it as a sprint. Whatever sprint works for you, that's what you need to do. And one of the things that I like about SMART is that it's very, very specific. But I would like to take that one step ahead and say that it's not just a SMART goal, but let's make them smarter. Because if we add 2 more things, we can make those even better. The first one is this one, that you have to enjoy it, you have to be enthusiastic about it. It has to be exciting. If it's not exciting, if you dread a goal, you're never gonna do it. Anybody has had a goal that someone actually imposed on you? And yes, exactly. And you don't like it, it's not you, it's, you dread it. So you actually just do the minimum to cover it, and that's it, and forget about it, but you don't give it your best. And then the other part is the R, which is the relevant part. If you right now are in a particular season of life, let's say, where the goal is not relevant to you or you cannot implement it, don't give it up, but simply park it. Let's just say that you want to wake up at 4 a.m. every day to write, or to have some time for yourself, or to exercise, or to do something. That's a fantastic goal. But if you have a baby that doesn't sleep through the night, and the last time the baby cried was at 2:30 in the morning, there is no way on earth that you are going to wake up at 4 a.m. So do something that is relevant and that really applies to you with those additional ER under SMART. Also, when you're planning for your goals, one suggestion is to plan for 2 types of goals, and those are performance goals and then learning goals. Performance goals is what we're all familiar with. We have an objective, we need to meet it. Say, run a marathon. So the objective is the marathon, we have a deadline, this is when we're gonna run it. That's wonderful. But what is the learning that goes along with it? That is what is going to enable us to make it happen and continue, and to create a habit that will ultimately lead us to success. In this case, let's say that the learning is proper nutrition, proper running form, proper exercising besides just the running. So all of those things, establishing a routine, creating a habit, all of those things are going to lead ourselves to be able to perform. So just remember that when you're planning for your goals, you need to set the learning part as well and stick to it, because that's the important part. And as you are planning, just also note that there are 2 types of work that you're going to be doing. And one of them is groundwork. Groundwork is not sexy, it is not glamorous, it is not beautiful, it is dull, it is boring. But it's so necessary because it sets the foundation. And as you see in here, groundwork, sometimes you're standing at ground level and you cannot see up. What you have is a hole because you're digging down. And then you think, oh my God, I'm not doing any progress. On the contrary, I'm going down. But that's what you need to do. The problem arises with our idea of the overnight success, because what we want to see is the visible work. And, oops, yes, there we go, there's the visible work. So when we see the visible work, we think or we believe that that is what we've always had and what should have happened from the beginning. That is the skyscraper, that is the gold medal, that is the running the marathon. But that is just the accomplishment. That's what's visible. What you didn't see was all the groundwork that laid that foundation for us to be able to achieve. So just know and plan. And all of these things that I'm telling you, I'm sure that they're not new to you, but they are so obvious sometimes that someone needs to point it out or just mention it. I am a quote freak. So I am going to bombard you with quotes because I think they encapsulate today so well the meaning of each one of the letters that I'm going to share with you. And the quote that I have for you that encapsulates this goal planning is this one right here. And it says, your attitude, that is that attitude of wanting, that willingness to be able to act, not your aptitude, meaning not the knowledge, but the execution, will determine your altitude. This will determine how high you want to fly and how big of a project you'll undertake, whatever the project is, however many goals you have. And no matter how many goals you have or what projects you undertake, the one thing that is very common and that you need to be aware and embrace is definitely the O, and that is ownership. The reason why I say ownership and not accountability is because I think accountability has a slightly negative connotation. What happens when we hear, who's accountable here? Oh my God, you want to run away, right? Holy cow. Or what happens when we hear the boss or someone say, we need to hold people accountable? Uh-oh. That's the negative connotation. Something always happens. There's nothing wrong with being responsible. But I think accountability is a bit reactive, whereas ownership is actually proactive. You embrace it, you take it, everything that comes with it. And that is because you have this wonderful freedom of choice that comes with having decided to own the project or the goal. Let me give you a quick example of this. How can we have this freedom of choice in thought and action that is our own, and how can we proactively utilize that? Let's pretend that you have a pizza restaurant. Anybody in here has a restaurant? No, there are no restaurateurs in here. Okay, so let's pretend. So let's assume that we're there and that my husband is joining us, and my husband loves his pizza with anchovies, which I don't. And oh my God, yes, woo. But he absolutely loves it, and he asks for anchovies wherever he goes. And what happens if the restaurant just ran out of anchovies? So, well, accountability could be, well, you know what, we just don't have it, and we blame the purveyor of food, whoever is in charge, the daily or weekly truck just didn't bring it, sorry, we don't have them. Or we can take that freedom and choose to say, oh, you know what, it's going to take just a little bit longer, but go 2 doors down or to the next block, wherever, and get a can of anchovies from the store and bring it back. And imagine what you would do to that customer if you were able to do that. that little can of anchovies could definitely bring that person back again and again, simply because of the goodwill that you're sharing and the goodwill that you're putting forth in terms of really giving them what you want. So that's what I mean by ownership and that freedom of choice. So you have a choice of being reactive or you have a choice of being proactive. When you're setting your goals, own them and always be proactive on them. And as you are being proactive in those goals, you also have to figure out what is going well and what isn't, and learn from that. And the best way is simply to be aware. And that takes me to the next letter, which is A, awareness. We have to figure out how to work with our time, with our efforts, and with our results to make sure that we are doing the very best that we can. What happens, though, with the productivity gurus? They all say, oh, get to the office an hour earlier, stay late, instead of 2 breaks, take 1. What happens? It's a race around the clock that they're giving us. And what they're talking about a little bit is time management in terms of efficiency, cramming things inside more hours. But we do not operate like that. We are biological beings. We are people. We do not have a switch on that feeds us something and out goes and a constant output over a number of hours. We don't operate like that. What we need to figure out is, instead of time management, our energy management. And for us to be able to execute, we have to be very aware of our mind and body and our emotions as well. And what I mean by this, let's start with the body. A lot of us, I am so guilty of this, I have to confess, see downtime sometimes with a little bit of guilt and a little bit of remorse. Anybody here, when we have so much to do? Yes, I agree. Thank you for being so honest. And now I don't feel so bad. But that's what happens. We do need it, and we feel refreshed after we take it, but initially going in is something that doesn't come easy, let's just put it that way. But the truth is that while we think that our thoughts lead our body, it's the other way around. It's our body that leads our thoughts. And if you don't believe me, try to do something dynamic. Go out for a jog or do something after Thanksgiving dinner. What happens? You feel completely sluggish. You don't want to do anything. It is your body that leads your thoughts. You do not want to do it. That's why in the evenings also, when you're exhausted after a long day, you do not want to do anything. So this concept is counterintuitive because we've been taught the other way around. And this is simply called embodied cognition. You don't need to remember this by any means, but this is a concept that I got from this fantastic book, which is called 2 Awesome Hours. If you haven't read it, go into Amazon and get it now, because the book shows you how to work with your body, with your mind, and with your surroundings to create what the author calls 2 awesome hours. And 2 hours is rather subjective. It could be 2 hours, it could be 3 hours, it could be 1 hour, it could be a minute. But what he is saying is create the space and the surroundings so that you can fully focus for a specific amount of time when you are at your peak. So you'll be able to figure out when you're at your peak, when your body, your mind, you're most alert, so that you can really pay attention and work on those things. And with that, you'll be able to achieve more because you'll be able to execute so much more on that. A few of the things that he does and that he suggests in the book is I'll just share with you, is the eat that frog methodology. Anyone familiar with that? All right, a few of you. Eat that frog simply means that if you were to eat a frog, you would want to do it right away. You don't want to drag it throughout the whole day because it's probably not very pleasant. So tackle because our mind tends to fatigue throughout the day. If you are at your most alert and ready to focus in the morning, that's when you should tackle those things first, with one exception, when you know that it's going to be super, super draining. So if you are going onto a very difficult conversation or a very difficult meeting, then the book will give you instructions so that you can somewhat sandwich that into something that gives you a lot of energy before, then you're going to have this draining thing, and then something that gives you the ability to recharge afterwards. Again, it's a fantastic read, but that's the methodology behind the Eat That Frog. You want to do that, not necessarily first thing in the morning, but when you are at your peak, when you have set aside your 2 hours for awesome focus, that's when you should tackle that. Another tip that he shares that I absolutely love has to do with our distraction. What happens when we are focused on something and we hear ding, 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 and so the phone, the alarm for something, the notification for something, that is crazy. How many of us do not turn notifications off? I know. And sometimes it's really hard because we're waiting for a call or something and we let that distract us. So one thing that we can do so that it doesn't distract us is set our tasks with different labels. There are 2 labels. You can see there's important and there's creative. Those 2 are the best that you can focus on when you are working on that area of focus. Definitely do that. But by virtue of labeling the others as simply other, it could be email or it could be something that you do not necessarily have to do at your full peak, then you know that it's set in your calendar and that you will be able to get to that later. So that is a wonderful way of knowing that you are indeed going to get to that and you will be able to focus on this. Because sometimes we're just so focused and we think, oh, but I need to retrieve something from an email and I'll just go into my email 2 minutes. And then 3 hours later, we're still checking email. So that's one of the ways in which you can combat that and focus on executing on your goals. So now we've seen mind, we've seen body, but what about emotionally? What do we need to be aware emotionally of? Well, has anybody heard of the crab mentality? No one? Woohoo! Okay, we have a person, wonderful. Let me share what this is. Apparently, if you leave a bucket of crabs with no lid and one of them tries to go out, the other ones won't let them because they'll pull the crab back in. And that is an analogy for sometimes how we emotionally do not let ourselves succeed because we think, oh, well, if I am succeeding in this area or if I'm excelling at something, oh, I may make more money than my parents, or my friends are not going to be my friends anymore, or my peers are not going to like me. There are all of these things, all of these limiting beliefs that we have inside us that sometimes act as another crab, as our own crab, pulling ourselves down. Just know, be aware that this is very common, that this happens to all of us, and that way, when it shows up for you, you will know that it's a limiting belief, you will be expecting it, and you'll be able to say, oh, thanks for showing up, thanks for sharing. You can stay here or go away because I'm not going to pay attention to you. So that's a very important thing to become aware of when it happens. And to sum up this, there's this beautiful quote that I love from Wayne Dyer, which says, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Think about that. If you change the way you look at how your body works when you're at your peak, it changes because you'll be able to be more focused. If you look at the times in which you are more mentally focused or more fatigued, you know that you will be able to change and focus that to your goals. When you know that crab mentality is creeping up, you'll be able to see it for what it is. So that way, there will be no guilt, there will be no problem in just recognizing when those things come up and then moving forward. And in terms of recognizing and not feeling that guilt, We tend to think as entrepreneurs that it has to be hard, right? That it's very hard work, and it indeed is. But there should not be a reason why, above and beyond the already hard but exciting and enjoyable part, that we should not take advantage of everything else that we can to make our lives easier. And that's where the next letter comes in, which is leverage. Definitely, by all means, as you are running with your goals, take advantage of everything to do this easier, better, and faster. Anything that will help you in your life to be able to do this. Do not, by any means, underestimate the importance of the humble but helpful calendar. If you set it in your calendar, what gets scheduled gets done. So treat your calendar as you would treat an appointment with anyone else. It's okay to renegotiate if you have to, just like you would with someone else. You know what? I have to reschedule, sorry. But if you stick to your calendar, you will definitely execute because you will get those things done. And something else that is very important when you're putting this together is keeping score, keeping track of where you started, where you're now, where you're going, where you've been. Not only as a way of seeing progress, but as a way of confronting yourself. Because how many times do we rationalize, well, I couldn't do it because, or it's the economy, or it's something or other, or the market. But if you are keeping track and seeing that you are not doing, eventually you really will have to think about what's going on and then decide whether you want to outsource it, give it to someone else, or whether that's a priority at all for you. One of the things that I want to share is this awesome quote again that encapsulates this about being able to partner or to use other things to our advantage so that we're not left on our own thinking that this is super hard work. And it's from the Prime Minister of India that says, we know we will be more successful when we pursue our goals in partnership with the world. And if India, which is such a powerful, huge country, thinks that they are better off with the help of other people, then by all means, use other people. Don't try to do it all by yourself. And then if, even though while you're doing all of these things, you are still too tied for time and it's going a little bit crazy and there is still this notion of overwhelm, one of the best things that you can start doing is subtracting. Focus, by all means, on the vital few and forget about the trivial many. This is a phrase that Craig McKeown gives in his book, Essentialism. Focus again on what really, really matters. If everything is a priority, then nothing is. Learn to say no, because when you say no, you open up possibilities for something that is going to be good for you and that will be able to help you execute even more. And one of the best mantras that I've heard for saying no is that if it's not a resounding, absolute hell yes, then it's no. It's as simple as that. And then if despite this, you are still overwhelmed, think of subtracting again everything that is not the essence, and think of the smallest part that you can do. For example, with my blog, what is the minimal thing that I can do? And that is write one word. So I write one word, and then that leads me to another one, and to another one, and to another one. And if I have to stop, that just means that I have left myself a breadcrumb trail that I can pick up later, after I am done, after I have taken a break, after, whenever it's time to come back and do this. And that way, hopefully, this has shown you how you can make it impossible to fail. So that's what I have for you. And of course, again, because I am a super, super quote freak, I just have to share this last one, which is what you get by achieving your goals is not as important as what you become by achieving your goals. So take that and run, go execute. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helena. That was really great.
Thank you. I'm so glad.
One of my favorite things that she shares is, one of my favorite things to do is to take and actually schedule time in your calendar for yourself for things that you need to do and treat that like an appointment with someone else. So if there's important things that I need to get done, I will literally schedule an appointment in my calendar for myself to do those things. And then when people are trying to schedule, like, nope, I'm booked during that time. They don't need to know what you're booked for, but you're booked during that time. That's your time. So treat your time as very valuable, because it is. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Let's give her another round of applause.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.